Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Blue Stable. I'm your host, Culture Shock. I'm not here alone. We are here to talk about the recap between the Indianapolis Colts and the Miami Dolphins, where the Colts found a way to win at the end of the day. The score was 16-10. But I'm not here alone. I got my guys with me, Landon and Close Friend Room. Landon, how we doing?
Doing great, man. How about that intro, bro? I'm hyped right now.
Shout out Chris Lamons in the making the cut for the intro. Love
Sick.
that.
Yes.
That had Landon fired up.
Dude, I'm so hyped right now. That's like I was telling Marcus, I was like, because we used to have an intro for the show. It got a little bit outdated, right? You know, some guys on there that are no longer here. And I was like, man, like I really love that intro we used to have. Like, is there a way to update that? Marcus was on it, bro. He got it done.
Yeah.
Like, dude,
Love that.
I'm hyped.
Love
bro.
Chris Lamons in the intro.
Thank you.
That's
That
huge.
was sick. And the way Richardson, the point into the blue stable, like it's great work, bro. It's sick.
Something like I did a little something here and there, just a little bit.
I could never do that in a million years. Like never. Like I'm so techno. Like you're lucky I'm even able to log on to do the show in the first place. Straight up like old man computer technology. Have no idea what I'm doing. So shout out for you for doing that because that's sick.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Close Friend Room, how we doing?
Man, I'm good. Happy to be back. Feel like it's been a minute. It's my probably Colts fans that consume a bunch of Colts content via X are probably sick of me. It's my third show this week. But every time us three get together to talk ball, I always enjoy it. So I had to get back. As soon as Grant Stewart had a legacy game, I knew that I had to link back up with Marcus. So we're back. We're back.
Yes, we are definitely back. We appreciate you for returning. Shout out to my guy, Close Friend Room. Let's go ahead and hop straight into the topics. As you may have heard, Grant Stewart, this is a Grant Stewart session. We appreciate his services. One of my favorite players in the Colts jersey, in and out. But we got to start with the quarterback, Anthony Richardson. Of course, the Colts won the game at the end of the day, 16-10. Anthony Richardson had a performance, 10 for 24, 129 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. It was a roller coaster performance, as usual, from Richardson. But he held his own towards the end, and his gameplay looked a little different from what we're used to seeing this season. Of course, more QB runs, more active, trucking defenders. A lot of people was questionable about that. I loved it, but I get your guys' thoughts on it. Of course, we're going to start with Coach Film Room. What was your thoughts on Richardson's performance against the Dolphins?
So I think you have to lead off by saying, listen, like in the NFL, if you have a lot of problems and you have things to fix and you can go look at the tape and make a lot of things to correct and you still won the ball game, that's the prime position you want to be in, to be honest with you, because the Colts they've said it, coaches, players, they are not shy about the fact that they have not played their best football yet. And I mean, that's pretty obvious. They haven't played good football, but they found a way to win. They're battle tested for sure. I mean, everything seems to has been a one-score game when it comes down in the fourth quarter. And those are the type of things that really mean something, and especially for the quarterback position. Anthony Richardson, I think the storyline is that, like we said, it's another roller coaster game. I think, I had a longer tweet this morning, kind of just recapping my thoughts where it's like, it's a combination of like, hey, they're asking Anthony Richardson to push the ball down the field. Every route seems to have depths of 10, 15 yards. Like we are pushing the ball way past the sticks. I'm not saying that that's bad. I think it's good to be aggressive. It's good to be explosive. It felt like when you watched it, it's like it's a combination of like there's some things that Anthony Richardson can be playing, needs to be better at. Needs to be better from kind of a footwork perspective that I think is leading to some inaccuracy and some indecision. And then also, Shane Steichen needs to help him out and get him some things that he can actually succeed off of. So it's a two-way street. But again, I think at the end of the day, this is an above 500 team that hasn't played like they're above 500, and they're finding ways to win ball games, knowing that they have a lot to correct. So you can only hope that they're going to hit their stride.
Landon, what was your thoughts on Anthony Richardson's performance?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was something for sure. I mean, I don't think necessarily as far as like the good and bad stuff, like I don't really pay too much attention to like that narrative of like, oh, like he was trash or like he was great. Like the truth always lies like somewhere in the middle where like there's just so much context that needs to be added. Like what Ben was saying, like wasn't really anything easy. Like they didn't give him anything just like simple. I mean, there were a
the
couple
easy things he missed. That's why it looks so ugly. Like,
yeah. But a lot of like what he was saying, like a lot of these throws are happening very far down there, like they're low percentage completions for the most part. Like just that's with any quarterback. Like anytime you push the ball 15 to 20 plus yards down the field, those are lower completions than sure you can inflate your completion percentage with some of these, screens and dump offs and stuff like that. And, I think that's probably when you're looking at like the surface level box score of things, that's what most Colts fans want to see. They want to see 68% completion percentage and stuff like that. But he's still averaging over like 12 yards an attempt, which is like crazy. But in the grand scheme of things, also, you can really clearly see the deficiencies of the footwork and going through like he's getting to the right place, which I think we've spoke on numerous times on the show where like that's kind of like one of the most important things is like he's getting there.
it's crazy that we're saying, despite the high turnover number, that he's actually a fine decision maker. Like for the most part, like I don't think,
and I think that's what's crazy.
That's never been something that's been a concern.
Yeah, where like when the bad decisions happen, which they are like very rarely bad, like just purely like bad decisions, like defenses are capitalizing on them, like they're very bad, but he doesn't make a ton of them. It's just really like turnover luck is what it is, where like whenever he is making the bad throws and the bad decision, it does tend to literally just find the defender in this. I mean, it's pretty wild, really, when you think about it. But I think Dan Orlovsky made a point today about stuff, which is hilarious because he has defended Richardson like literally from the jump. And the one time he got critical about anything, everybody just jumped on him. Like reading those comments, it was so funny to see whenever
it was good. It was like there was nothing he said that was wrong. Like
exactly.
there's Anthony Richardson is filled with so much talent. He's not. I think it's still okay to say, and I think we talked about this on Locked On Colts with Zach, and he kind of put what I was saying into perfect words, where it's like, just because the expectations are lower with a young quarterback that's developing doesn't mean the standard it should be lower. The standard is still high. He was still the 4th overall pick in the draft. We've seen him play at a high level on a snap-to-snap basis. He can put together a complete game and he can be playing better than he's playing, and he's not. So you can look at the game and we can pick. Landon, I love what you said on Twitter, where it's like we can pick we shouldn't have to pick some advanced analytics to like try and convince people that he's a good quarterback.
Like, this is good football.
Like this is good football. Like it's not. Like this is not good football. Like what happened versus Miami was not great. They won the game, and that's what's also important. So like there's a lot to fix, a lot to correct as you go into this quote unquote gauntlet. And this Miami thing can be the best thing that ever happened to you, or you can let it absolutely expose everything that's wrong with the offensive system right now and Anthony Richardson. So I think it's fine to hold Anthony Richardson to a high standard just because our expectations might be a little bit lower with a quarterback that's still trying to figure things out.
Yeah, and one thing like that I haven't seen too much of is like everybody's really like piling on Richardson, which is like rightfully so. Like we said, it's not like he's playing good football right now. I mean, like what he's putting on film, and I spoke on this even a few weeks ago. Like this is not an NFL level passer. I don't even know if it's a collegiate level passer at this moment. But nobody is giving credit to what Miami did on the flip side of things. Like Miami made things super difficult for the Colts, and like nobody is giving them credit for what the game plan that they put together and the way that they defended, especially in the secondary. The secondary was all over the Colts receivers all day long. Like that's what I was saying is like there wasn't anything easy. Like
I mean, and they probably should have had some. Because because I agree. Miami put together a really good plan, and I loved everything that these blitz happy defenses like Brian Flores's have been. And you look back to last year with Lou Anarumo, and then you look back to last year with Ryan Nielsen in Atlanta, where the Colts have put up stinkers, and really. It's difficult because they won the game in Baltimore, but they didn't have a great day offensively. Let's be honest there. They had some turnover help. They did not. I mean, Gardner Minshew was out there. Yes, all those games were with Gardner Minshew. But when you talk about the system and having answers for it, it gave me a lot of flashbacks to that game because they put together finding a way to get after Anthony Richardson. Yes, did it result in sacks? And that's been the story. No. And that's all credit to Anthony Richardson, by the way. Like, if you want to give him there was definitely some moments of really good quarterbacking in this game, but it's not been a complete game whatsoever. It's not to the level that it needs to be for if Anthony Richardson's contract ended today, would he be the quarterback going into next year? I don't think and it doesn't. So you don't really have to, it's a rhetorical question because you don't have to ask yourself that. But he hasn't put enough complete games together to really even know what he can be or what he is. It's just reach that potential that we know he has. So there were some moments of being really good. Miami had a really excellent plan, bringing second level pressure and really forcing the Colts to be hot and reading where they're sliding to and all these kind of things. And there were some free runners, and Anthony Richardson did a great job evading it. But there's also some drops. There was a factor. There's some missed throws. I think particularly the stick combination that on the RPO.
Mo Alley Cox.
Yeah, we're to Mo Alley Cox where that ball was sky mailed, but the footwork was terrible.
He just jumped right into pressure.
Personally, he got a lot of heat in the moment for the drop snap. Yes, that's on the quarterback. Those are the ones where it's I don't think you can make sweeping takes from a turnover perspective when you talk about a drop snap. Those are going to happen sometimes. You don't never want them to, but they're going to. So that they're definitely going to have answers and answers quick for that kind of scheme. So I do think you do have to credit Miami. They have a really good pass defense. I just think there's a difference between excuses and context. And I think that we can talk about the context of the Colts have played a lot of really good defenses. Well, I think you can turn on the film and say they probably should have beaten those defenses even more, which maybe is a good thing because they're just beating themselves and not executing. We're missing easy throws. Our footwork is kind of all over the place at times. You want to know why Michael Pittman hasn't gotten involved? It's because we basically gotten rid of a lot of our base plays where he excels in. When you talk about the RPOs, when you talk about some of the quick game and 3-step drop concepts, that's where Michael Pittman has made his money as a receiver. That's what they did with Gardner Minshew. That's thrown out the window. So there's so many factors to talk about the defense, but it shouldn't just be, they played good defenses, that's why they've stunk. When you go and look at it, it's they really should have had even better days versus those defenses.
Oh, yeah.
It's because they keep shooting themselves in the foot because they can't execute.
I agree 100%. 100%. Like I say, a lot of these games that the Colts have a misadvantage in, it's literally them just beating themselves. I think they can compete very well against any team. But, it is what it is at the end of the day. But mentioning the run game, Anthony Richardson running the football was a thing of beauty. Him trucking the defender, thing of beauty in my eyes. It's a corner, by the way. It's not a linebacker or defensive tackle, so you guys got to lay low a little bit. But Anthony Richardson, 14 carries, 56 yards, and Tyler Goodson, 14 carries, 51 yards. Trey Sermon had a little run, and Ashton Dulin had one as well. The impact that Anthony Richardson has on the run game is not talked about enough because of how much of a threat he is doing both, and it showed against the Dolphins. Of course, there were some times where the offense got a little stale, but the run game opened up just because Richardson being back there leaves so many defenses confused of what he's going to do next. And I think the run game had a pretty decent day compared to the pass game. I think that was the bread and butter, the run game at the end of the day. Of course, it didn't amount to any points, but it did get us a lot of yards moving forward. 155 total rushing yards. The Dolphins had almost 200, but that's a conversation for another day. But what was your guys' thoughts about the run game? I could start with Landon against the Dolphins and pretty much Richardson's impact on the run game as well.
Well, I mean, this team misses Jonathan Taylor. I'll tell you that. The run game, I mean, it wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. And 155 yards, like really a lot of that. I mean, Richardson, of course, accounted for 50 something. Tyler Goodson had like the one big explosive run.
Loved it.
Yeah, like Trey Sermon, he's good at what he does, which is get positive yards and, great at pass blocking and stuff. I think, like I said, though, I think this team just misses Jonathan Taylor. I mean, there were quite a few of those runs where, you're sitting there and you're watching and you're like, man, like that run went for 8 yards, but if Jonathan Taylor's in that same spot, like that run might go for 40. And they could be a massive game. And a lot of that is credit to Richardson, especially like I pointed it out kind of in real time after the play happened, where like you watch on the touchdown run, and you just see the linebackers and the defenders just get sucked over to where Anthony Richardson is on that keeper. And it just opens up this massive lane. And shout out to Quentin Nelson too, which was a fantastic block on that play. Just opens up this massive hole, for the touchdown. And I don't necessarily believe that if Joe Flacco was the quarterback of that game last week,
absolutely not.
I don't know if they win that game, honestly. Like, but I mean, that's kind of just conjecture for here or there, but it's just paramount, I think, that if Anthony Richardson can stay healthy, they get Jonathan Taylor back. He practices today in a limited, role. Like this offense could still be like extremely, extremely dangerous on the ground. I love them opening up Anthony Richardson and letting him run the football. I think these were the most carries he's had in his career in a game with 14. I believe like it was like 8 or 9 of them were actually designed quarterback runs and not scrambles. And it seems like whenever he does get to run the football, that it just gets him so jacked up, and he really just gets like into the game and he starts to play better, and he's not, worried so much about just every little thing going around, and it gets in his head and all that. It just kind of frees him up, and he really starts to play loose, and he really starts to improve, I think, even just as a passer, with just getting involved in some of these run plays. And like you said, trucking, like look how hype he was getting that, first down and stuff like that. So it's a great thing to see. You just have to hope and pray that, at this point, the injuries are, I mean, you're going to get dinged up, right? Like nobody's ever going to be 100%, but you just hope it doesn't knock him out of any games, because that's really been the main issue is all the games. Like, he has 2 or 3 stinkers, and then he starts a game and it looks like, it's like, okay, like we're finally getting comfortable now. And he's starting to look really good. That first drive, that second drive, the first quarter, he starts to look really good. And then he gets hurt. And then it's like starting from square one all over again. So you just have to hope the injury thing moving forward doesn't knock him out of any games. But I think the quarterback run game is just paramount for this team moving forward. I think they should run him more than what they did this week. They could not stop it. And I think having Jonathan Taylor back there too, whenever hopefully he plays this week against Houston, it's just going to open things up even more, because it's just such a dangerous combination.
Yeah, I think the run game was obviously improved with the likes of Anthony Richardson. I do probably agree that they missed Jonathan Taylor. I think they also missed Will Fries, and I believe Ryan Kelly came out during this game. Is that true? Did I make that up in my head?
I think that was last game.
Did Tanner Bortolini come in?
I don't think so.
Did I make that up? Okay, I made that up. But I think
Nelson missed a play. One play.
Oh, Nelson.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Gonzalez came in, but Nelson came back.
Okay, perfect. All right. There you go. I think they definitely miss a little bit of that up front. I think they can still be a little bit better in that area, because I think when they had the first couple of weeks, I mean, they were as dynamic as go look at the Green Bay game, and they ran all over Green Bay. Like, it was really like that. So they definitely need Jonathan Taylor back there. I think Tyler Goodson gave him some really good valuables. Like, Tyler Goodson has been one of I think even since he dropped that ball in Houston, I was all over it saying he was going to make this roster. He is a talented guy.
I started him in fantasy football this week.
And you need to find better options.
Yeah, they're all on the freaking IR, like every
well,
other
that was
player.
actually he probably had like a decent day.
I did. I won.
There you go.
In the week.
He gave them everything that they needed when he was gone. I mean, it wasn't. You're never going to find someone to replace Jonathan Taylor. Like, get that. You're like, period. It does not matter who you have. I mean, you can even see it with the 49ers. That Jordan Mason's great, but see, he's not Christian McCaffrey. So, you were never going to find anyone to totally replace it. I think they're definitely going to get Jonathan Taylor back and speak great. When it comes to the run game with Anthony Richardson, I'm also a big fan of running him. I know that a lot of people get really interested or really concerned, particularly about injuries. I understand. I share and understand those concerns. My thing is that's Anthony Richardson's superpower. That's one thing that he can give to this offense today that is going to put him in the conversation of the best at that attribute. Like, he might be one of the better quarterbacks, if not the best. I mean, Lamar's up there for sure, but pure runner of the football, like, that's what Anthony Richardson gives you and is a superpower. He makes plays with his legs.
It's like him and Derrick Henry.
You have to hone that and see where it goes. Like, if it runs its course and it turns into, like, I think that, you know, he did a pretty decent job taking care of himself too with a couple slides there. It was good to see. But they have to utilize it because it's so dominant and it's what they have right now to keep the offense on schedule. They don't have anything else because it's all deep passes down the field and play action, 5-step gun stuff that you don't have anything, especially without Jonathan Taylor, that can turn a 2 to 3 yard gain and keep you on schedule when a run should be dead. They don't really have that right now. But that's Anthony Richardson's superpower. It can never go away. Like, we need 7-8 attempts a game. Like, you just do. But yeah, I think going forward to Houston, you get Jonathan Taylor back. You're really excited about what Anthony Richardson gives you. I really like the one kind of fake motion the running back out, fake like it's going to basically be a pass play, and then time it up with like a quick snap almost with jet motion. So you got Anthony Richardson on the perimeter. I think it's really good. Like, Anthony Richardson's so good at running downhill. So when you can get him downhill while avoiding linebackers and defensive tackles, I think that's a great run concept for him.
I agree 100%. One of these games this week, I don't know what it's going to be, but one of these games this year, he's going to take it to the house. It's a house call. I can already see it. Don't know which game, but it's going to happen. And for the fans that worry about Richardson taking on contact, just look at the blitz where Jalen Ramsey tried to take Richardson down. He literally ragdolled Jalen Ramsey off of a sack. That's how tough he is. Like, he's a robot. It's not as easy as you think to take down Anthony Richardson. This dude is a freak of nature. But to switch over to the interesting side of the field, this is where it gets hot, right? So we got to give credit where credit is due. Shout out to my favorite, Grant Stewart, replacing EJ Speed. You know, it was only a matter of time where Grant Stewart would come in and just take over by storm. Led the team in tackles. He was all over the field. And he didn't even have to get an interception. This dude is so dynamic of a player, and I don't know what it is, but I got to give the Colts credit where credit is due. All of these special team guys that just transition and actually get their chance, they make their moment and they make it. Like, these guys are impact guys, man. So I got to give Grant Stewart his flowers. Definitely dogged this game. Player of the game, in my opinion. Shout out to Isaiah Franklin as well. Alubi got to get his flowers as well. But this defense, you know, in the first half, it was a little shaky. But going into the second half, like mid-third, going into the fourth, this defense was not losing this game. So I got to give credit to the defensive side. Against the run game, like I said at the beginning, it was a little shaky, but the defense just turned it up and was not going to lose on Dallas Clark Day. So Landon, let me get Coach Firmo, let me get your thoughts first.
Sorry, I interrupted there. I was just too excited. The one thing I definitely want to talk about that I feel like should be talked about more is, like, you have to pick. Mike McDaniel comes off a bye week. You know he's going to have some things ready. He's always been pretty good at scheming up things in the run game. You can only pick one, though. So, like, You know that they're trotting Tyler Huntley out there, but they also have Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, and to hold them to what basically was nothing the entire day, having zero impact on the game, coming off a bye week. That's a huge win for the confidence of the secondary when the schedule came out and you knew that the Colts didn't make any moves in the secondary, that was the game that you circled and said, they're going to get cooked. Nobody can run with Tyreek Hill. Nobody can run with Jalen Waddle. They're going to get cooked. And people are going to tell me, oh, well, Tyler Huntley was playing quarterback. Tim Boyle was playing quarterback. That's fine. But they still couldn't get but they're also NFL quarterbacks, and you couldn't get guys that were supposed to absolutely cook the secondary, the ball. Like, that's a win. And they played a lot of split safety coverage in this game. They did. They put a lot of cover 2 to try and stop that. It's hard to stop the run in cover 2. And that's where a lot of those early struggles came in, where it's like, let's find a way to get Jonnu Smith the ball, because these linebackers are fitting faster because they're short a man in the box. So that's where a lot of where it came from. I thought this defense balled out, and this is probably the best game the defense has played past really the entire season. Now I get it. It's the competition is whatever, and it's hard to move the goalposts when, hey, we were just literally 2 weeks ago, we were getting on them for Jacksonville and letting Trevor Lawrence and what looked to be a dead offense run all over them. So they beat up on an inferior team, held them to 0 points in the second half. I want to say they've let up 3 points in the second half the past 2 games. I want to say that. So
that's correct.
This is what Gus Bradley runs, a bend but don't break defense is the definition of it. Terrible in terms of yards allowed, but it's sub top 10 in terms of points allowed. And that's all that really matters. You can look at all the advanced analytics, all this kind of stuff. The only thing that realistically matters is how many points you have versus how many points they have. And if they aren't scoring that many points, that's a win for the defense. That's the objective. Don't let them score, right? Like, we can talk about all of these, make football as complicated as we want to, but at the end of the day, not letting them score is the objective of a defense, and they hadn't done it versus an offense that easily could have came out after the bye, found a way to get a win on the road versus a defense that had been struggling, and get themselves to 500 before Tua comes back. So that's an absolute win for the Colts secondary. It's an absolute win for the Colts defense. And then Grant Stewart coming in with 18 tackles. I mean, like, I don't want to get ahead of myself, because I don't think that, like, Grant Stewart is going to fight for anyone's job necessarily, but he came in and balled out. He's a dog on special teams that no one cares about, but until he makes a play. And then he came in and played really, really good football when they needed him the most.
Amen. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle both had 1 reception that game. Waddle had 11 yards, and Hill had 8.
He agrees with me. I think Landon agrees with me.
Yeah, I mean, we can go through the whole motions of, and like, I got pushed back a lot on this week, right? And I know you read some of it, Ben. Everybody's always has been so hyper focused on well, they only had 3 or 4 targets between Waddle and Hill, so they weren't really. Why do you think they weren't getting targeted? It's because they weren't open. These.
There's no way Mike McDaniel you go watch the film, but there's no way Mike McDaniel is sitting there oh yeah, let's just run it with Achane 50 times. We don't think our quarterback can make it. There's so many ways to get Tyreek Hill the ball, and he's shown that he can do that in ways that aren't difficult for an NFL quarterback to. We can't make these excuses when Malik Willis was the one.
Exactly
situation with Malik Willis got out-coached, out-schemed, outplayed. They come into an identical situation with the starting quarterback out, but the entire offense pretty much intact, and then they dominated. So that's a win. I do not care.
Yeah. What I think you put it really well about moving goalposts is if we're going to criticize them for getting cooked constantly, which they really haven't been, if we're being honest, outside of since Womack has really come into the picture and shared most of the stuff. Yeah, they haven't really been cooked.
Outside of the Brian Thomas Jr. Deep ball, something to Roma,
the Dallas
Dunze,
Flowers,
and a couple jump balls to Roma Dunze and George Pickens. This defense has been pretty good against the pass in terms of limiting explosive plays. The deep ball isn't an issue with them.
Yeah, and So like, why are we like when they play bad, we're so quick to jump all over them, and I'm quick to jump all over them. But whenever they play good, everybody wants to always find an excuse about why they played good. And you can't just leave it at that. Like, if you're going to criticize, that's okay to criticize.
It doesn't fit the
Criticism
fire
is
Gus
deserved.
Bradley narrative. It
Yeah,
just doesn't
but
fit the Gus
if
Bradley.
they play good, then they just play good, and we can just leave it at that. Like they had a good game. Like what more do you
multiple
want?
multiple
And like, this whole
turnovers,
thing,
sack. Like
yeah, like the whole thing of like that I've pushed back on all week is like we have to look at the level of competition and what they've played against. So they should have lost those games instead. Would that have made you feel better if they lost? Like why? Like what more do you want? Like
a good team is allowed to win against, or a better unit is allowed to win. Like
that's not even that. And like of course too. I said the Detroit thing, which like of course got somebody mad. I was like, I can't believe you're comparing the Colts to Detroit. But I was like, if you look at Detroit's wins, right? Detroit, 3 of their 5 wins have all been one possession wins where they have won by less than 7 points. That is most of the NFL. You do not see blowouts constantly. Almost every game is decided by one possession. So
the game almost, I would love to see someone get some analytics on this. I'm sure it's out there. I'm sure it's a quick Google search. I would say 70% of games are serious competitions into the fourth quarter. Like that's what the NFL is. It's 3 quarters. Can you play yourself? Can you keep yourself in it until you get to situational fourth quarter football? And that's what it is for the majority.
How many times? I mean, and you hear it constantly. It's a game of inches, or it's a game of, whoever has the ball last is going to win. And like you hear this stuff constantly. But now we want to make like everybody's been so critical of Chris Ballard, me included. I know Ben's been a little bit critical. Marcus is never critical, so that's okay.
I've been a little bit less critical of Chris Ballard, but I have.
But that's what I'm saying. So, like in the last few weeks, though, like I've kind of like let up a little bit because the main criticism, right, that everybody wants to go to is, well, look at his record. This guy doesn't put together a roster that wins games. But now when they're winning games, now we want to find something new and move the goalpost to complain about because, okay, look at his record. It's a losing record. We're not this. Now it's, well, look at they're winning games, but look at who they're playing. Dude, a win is a win. Like, I'm not going to apologize for like taking a win against a bad quarterback. Like, it is what it is. And there are realistically, will they be more tested over the next 5 weeks? 100%. Yes. They should be more tested over the last 5 weeks or over the next 5 weeks. But you play who's on the schedule and you're acting too like, it's like, well, Miami's had to deal with a backup quarterback. Miami's had to deal with this.
Look how great Pittsburgh looked, and that defense found a way to.
I'm sorry, have I just missed where the Colts are just loaded of the all-stars all over their roster, and they're going up against bad injured teams? Like,
I
thought the Colts, they've had 13 starters miss multiple games. They've started a backup quarterback for 2 weeks. Their 2 best players have been out for multiple weeks. And yet it's the excuse of, well, look at who they're playing. Like the Colts haven't been injured as well. Like, go look at the practice report today and tell me that this team isn't overcoming adversity on a weekly basis. Like, it's crazy that.
Can we take the Chris Ballard tangent real quick? Do we have time to do a Chris Ballard tangent? Because
35 minutes.
Here's the thing that everyone loses me at the Chris Ballard tangent off one thing. Landon and I got into a debate about it, but although I now understand what he was saying, and Twitter doesn't allow for nuance, like we all know.
No, nope. And that's what I was saying is too, because I don't have like the Twitter Blue or whatever, so like I have to watch my character.
I pay like a scumbag so that I can get way too long-winded.
You're one of those.
So here's Chris Ballard definitely deserves faults, and I think where everyone loses me about Chris Ballard is the fact that I think that he should have probably been gone after the 2022 season. And the fact that they retained him with a new regime, coaching staff, gives, in my eyes, is a fresh start. It's a fresh start for Chris Ballard. So when everyone brings up the years, I almost like block that out of my memory because in my opinion, Chris Ballard should have already been gone. So the fact that Jim Irsay kept him, basically you signed up for this. You signed up for a more mediocre seasons with a new developing quarterback and a new head coach and a new regime. It's very it's rare to get it's very rare to get a Jaden Daniels potentially in Washington or CJ Stroud where you can just like 1 year flip the franchise like that. That's not always the case. And we were signing ourselves up for that with Chris Ballard. Like he should have been gone after the 2022 season. The fact that Jim Irsay decided to keep him with a new coach and say he wasn't the issue, we had signed up for this. So like when everyone's like loves to talk about, well, he's 50% win percent, he should have been gone. So the fact that he's still around, he gets a fresh start. And for me, I see he's had one winning season without a quarterback, and he's above 500 in his second year. Now people can say, oh, that's not irrational, but that's the way that I look at it, because why are we talking about the move he made with other than history? Like he has a chance to rewrite it in a new slate. I think the other thing, everyone got all on him about the secondary. That has not been the problem. Samuel Watt, not saying that like he should get insane credit for a 15th place waiver claim, well performing at his expectations. But when you look at pure results, Jalen Jones has been great. Jalen Jones has been awesome. Kenny Moore obviously has been a staple. Nick Cross was a guy that, looking back on it, everyone wanted him out of here. He looks to, I mean, and partially the nonsense came after the Josh Downs, but people wanted him gone before that. And he's proven to be a guy that you can bet on. So, like, I'm not saying that he's perfect. I'm not saying that there's not a happy medium between, maybe the Rand Carthon philosophy and the Chris Ballard philosophy, but more often than not, Chris Ballard's been a fine general manager that's been honestly dealt an unlucky hand with the Andrew Luck situation and then should have been gone in 2022. So the fact that he stayed, he gets a new fresh start to prove himself, in my opinion.
Yeah. And
shout out to the Titans.
If Jim Irsay gave him that, why can't the fans?
Yeah. Well, I think like that's been kind of like the conjecture of and like, here's the thing is I understand both sides of it. Like I get it because the fans didn't sign up for that. They didn't.
You're right. That's fair.
And so like whenever like, you say like, this is what we signed up for. Most everybody didn't sign up for this. Jim Irsay did. And that's the only thing that really matters. And so the only way they can voice their displeasure with that situation is to get online and complain. And so like I understand because I'm frustrated as well. Like I get it. We're in year 8. You're still,
but in my opinion, it's not year 8.
That's where
I get it.
But that's where I agree with you. Is like, yes, technically it is year 8, but in reality, once he drafted Anthony Richardson, you at minimum have a 3-year window. And so guess what, everybody? If Anthony Richardson still looks like this at the end of next year, and they miss on another quarterback, and the roster still isn't competing,
I think there's a scenario they keep Shane if Anthony Richardson doesn't work out. I really do. I've floated that idea to myself, and I mean Jim Irsay.
I think you should, and I think he needs to have say on hiring the GM, somebody he works close with. I don't think there should be, and like we can get like there's been a lot of criticism on Shane here in the last few weeks, and some of it is kind of warranted. But the fact that this team has a winning record with their quarterback playing awful and dealing with the injuries they've dealt with, and really you've lost what you would say, 3 or 4 of your 5 best players. And
this is what Shane's taking coaches better under adversity than most of the NFL.
It's crazy.
That's the
literally
difference.
If they go into Houston and win this game, technically Houston still has the tiebreaker, but like they're tied at the top for the division lead against the Houston Texans, who just a couple weeks ago had only lost 1 game, and they were looking like they were on their way to possibly being a top 2 seed in the AFC. So
things can flip so quickly in a hurry. Like he sat there after the Green Bay saying 0-2. It's like people lose 2 games in a row. It happened to be our first 2, and they've won 4 of their last 5. I get it. The opponents, might not have been what Colts they didn't want.
But even the games they lost by 1 possession. It's not like they've been getting blown out, right? Like, and so
they had a chance to win the Jacksonville game. They absolutely had a chance.
They had a chance to win the Houston game. They had a chance to win the Green Bay game
and the Packers game.
Like all of those games were by 1 possession.
Did they deserve to? That's a different question. But they had a chance, like that.
And so, I mean, like, sure, can we, like, this is where we're at now. And of course, the NFL is a what have you done for me lately league. In 5 weeks from now, say they go 0-5 or 1-5, we're sitting here looking back on this, and it's a completely different conversation. But this is where we're at right now. And right now, the Colts have a winning record after dealing with tons of adversity. I think that's a credit to not only Shane Steichen, I think that's a credit to Chris Ballard and the depth that this roster has had. And so if you are going to be critical, which I have no problem of, I'm critical as well. But if you're going to be critical, you also have to be willing to give those guys their flowers when things do work out.
Totally. If we have to acknowledge it when you see it. Like, for example, I was very critical, I think, in certain spots with Michael Pittman looking like he might have been jogging some routes. He came up and balled out in Tennessee, and I was the first one to raise my hand and say I wasn't alone, but I certainly was wrong about a lot of things about Michael Pittman.
And then too, like the injury stuff came out,
and I didn't know that. And I wish if I knew that, I don't think I would have said. I mean, I would have acknowledged, hey, maybe you sit on the bench if you're gonna. That's a whole other thing, right? But like, why does Chris Ballard not get any credit for Grant Stewart? He brought him in. Grant Stewart balled out. Grant Stewart got a lot of credit, but no one wants to talk about, maybe Richard Smith or Gus Bradley that coached him up. No one wants to talk about Chris Ballard for bringing him in the first place, who's been a key special teamer. It's hard to give Chris Ballard credit, but you have to in a lot of these situations. So if I'm going to criticize him, I better be the first one to acknowledge the other side, because if it really was that bad, he would have definitely been gone. But Jim Irsay saw some things in Chris that he did that said it's worth another shot that he didn't see in Frank when he made that decision. So, because we've seen owners around the league just be like, Jim Irsay isn't predictable. I don't think, I think Anthony Richardson could still look like the 32nd ranked quarterback. They could lose out the rest of the season. Both of them are getting another year. Certainly to prove it around. Now, will the noise be as loud as it's ever been? Absolutely. That's how the NFL works, but they will certainly get it. But yeah, I wanted to say that because I do think that, like, listen, you can be upset at the lack of free agent spending, although they spent $200 million on their own guys. You can be upset that they haven't generated headlines in the trade markets, and they've never won the media circuit. And I think that's where it comes down to part of it is, like, Chris Ballard's never made a move, maybe outside of DeForest Buckner, that like has won the media circuit over. Like, oh my God, they signed this guy. This is a big signing. They never had their Stephon Diggs moment, their, Devontae Adams moment, all that kind of stuff. But he's put together solid rosters. They haven't executed, but he's shown that he can draft. So
yeah, and there's still like things that I'm like, even to this day, like I'm still critical about, like the way, like the approach that he has to certain things and the stubbornness that he has with certain things. But like I said,
look at all the teams that are like we talked about this later. Like, look at the Titans right now. They went all in. They said, we're going to just buy around we're going to win free agency. We turn this to new coach, new locker room, all this kind of things. And now they're selling halfway through the season. So
that's,
and then look at the Miami
Dolphins. Like, but like that approach, so I don't think there's a right or a wrong approach, right? Which is my whole thing is like,
oh, I do. So let's get into this.
Yeah. Okay. So we can get into this. I think depending on where you are at as a franchise is where it needs to be. Like, if you have drafted well and you have a base level of like where most of your team is drafted and developed talent, I think it is okay to go out and get a few big pieces. Like, I don't see a problem in utilizing free agency.
I agree.
But I also agree to the point of where, like, you can't buy a roster. Like, that is proven, right? You cannot buy a roster. And I think that is where the Titans messed up, is because the reason why these free agent acquisitions don't look good isn't because they went out and paid 2 players big money. Now, like, was that a bad decision based on where they are at? 100%. But the reason why it looks bad is because they haven't drafted worth of shit over the last half decade, and they have outside of like a handful of players over the last 5 drafts that they have that are still even on the roster. And so, like, you have to look at where your franchise is. And
so, like,
like it made sense.
You look at, but here's kind of my thing. Like you go, Stephon Diggs had 5 catches for 23 yards. Like we could ever since losing Nico Collins, the guy that they drafted, now the offensive line looks, it's everything about the offense doesn't look great.
Yeah, but here's the thing. So here's my pushback with that though.
Right.
It's so like because we want to get into like the Houston thing, and we're acting like these guys who, by the way, Stephon Diggs was on a 1-year deal. It's a 1-year deal. It's not a make or break to where it just screws their franchise, right? It's not really that big of a deal.
I'm not saying that it is.
Like, I'm not going to sit here and act like a guy that was top 5 in catches, like league wide. Like, this isn't just for the Texans. Like, this is league wide. He was tied for he's top 10 or 13th or something in touchdown. Like, he is top 10 in numerous metrics for them. For like throughout the league, and to act like
this year,
1-year swing, like taking a 1-year swing on a guy that has produced.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying
a top 10 level isn't making an impact. It's the same thing with Danielle Hunter. It's like, yes, they have Will Anderson Jr. and he's been phenomenal. Danielle Hunter has been better than Will Anderson Jr. this year. Like, he's generated more pass rush win rate. He's generated more pressures. He's like, if you look at the other side of the ball. Like
they've been fantastic.
Made a huge impact for that team, but they can afford to do that stuff because they've drafted well, and it's okay.
Well, yes, they went in. They bought some big ticket free agents, right?
And who are largely working out for them, and that's fine to acknowledge.
We can. Hunter is Diggs was what the media touted him to be in this offense versus what he's produced, in my opinion, is not.
Well, like that's your first mistake is listening to the media.
Well, I wouldn't say even the media. There's respected people in the media that probably thought that Diggs was going to turn. I'm not talking about Skip.
I mean, like relative to the second half of the season.
Nico Collins, the guy that they paid, and he's been the best receiver on their team, and the team looks nothing like they should when he was the guy that they drafted and they paid all along. I'm not saying using that.
And even like Joe Mixon coming in, like Joe Mixon has made a massive impact on that running game whenever he is in the game.
I don't agree. I agree. I don't disagree. That's what I mean to say.
So, I mean,
they've made some quality impact when they had the really strong base. I'm with you on that. I also think the Colts, when you compare it to what the Colts have said, those are two different situations because one, obviously,
I agree.
That's where I'm saying, like, if we're going to use Tennessee as an example of why buying a roster is really bad, we can't also use Houston as an example to say, because it's all about bringing the right players in and not the best ones. Houston happened to get the pick of their litter. Like when it was reported from Stephen Holder that the Colts offered more money to Danielle Hunter. I don't think they're mad about potentially having Latu on their team and how the draft unfolded when it was all said and done. But they offered him with that $200 million. They happened to bring in Kenny Moore. They paid big money to. He just happened to be their own as a nickel. So like, is one of the best nickels this year. So like, in my opinion, if we can't use the Titans as an example of why necessarily buying a roster. Well, the Colts should start buying more free agents. If we're also going to say Houston is the prime example because they did similar things, it just happened to be their own guys.
Which that was my whole argument because people were using the Titans as a reason of why free agency doesn't work and why Chris Ballard was correct. And it's unfair, I think, to Chris Ballard. I think it's unfair to the Titans, really, because those are two wildly different situations. Like, what the Titans should have done this year is exactly what the Colts should have done or are doing, right? Like, that's exactly what the Titans should have done is what the Colts are doing because they don't know, they did not know, and they still probably don't. They might have a lot better of an idea of what Will Levis is, right? You don't know what he is. So why are you going out and you make the trade for Ernest Jones? You signed Calvin Ridley. You do all this. Like, you push all your chips in.
And you set yourself back. You have
no idea what your roster is. Like, that's so stupid. And we all agree it's stupid. But also, like, the argument is, like, Houston has, like, they know what CJ Stroud is. You know that, like, what type of quarterback he is. You know where your team's at. You know you're trying to go in and compete right now while he's on a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract because he has proven that he can play at a borderline elite level. And so, like, it's okay to acknowledge that, like, Houston probably did what was best for them. Tennessee did not do what's best for them. But to use it's like what Tennessee is doing as the argument of, like, well, see, free agency doesn't work. They're not losing games because they went out and signed a couple.
This is where we kind of, I think they, like, if you look at
they're not the solution, but they are not the reason why they're losing. The reason why they're losing is because the players that have been, they have no base. Like, you don't have, like, what good do you have? You have Jeffrey Simmons. You've got
Sweat.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, you've got a handful, like, you got 4 or 5 guys, right? I mean, JC Latham looks like he's going to be good. Skoronski looks okay. He's kind of like up and down. I think he's going to be a good player. You've got Sweat and all them. You've got the pass rusher there, Landry, Harold Landry. He's a good player.
Colts respected him, by the way. They were chipping him, by the way.
Yeah, he's a good player. So, like, yes, you have a handful of players, but if you go back and look at their drafts, I mean, that's literally like 6 guys out of every bit of 40 guys. I mean, you've hit on 6 guys out of 40. Look at how many misses they have had in the first round over the last decade.
That's not even Ran Carthon.
Yeah, no, I know, that's what I'm saying. But but he still inherited that roster, right? Like, so that's the roster you have. So to go in on all that is, in my opinion, like, it's just kind of like negligence, right? And to think that, I guess they fell into, like, the trap, right, that a lot of teams fall into, where they think that they're just a couple pieces away from competing. And that's normally whenever you see guys go out there and they just go wild in March, because they're like, I think we're, just a couple pieces away from really being one of the better teams in the league. And you kind of start to, like, look through your roster with rose-colored glasses. And unfortunately, like, that's not the case. But that's what my point was like, them utilizing free agency. Like, have those guys been the solution to them winning games? No, they haven't. And that's why they're probably not great contracts. But I don't think you can solely pin the Titans winning one game this year on, like, well, look at how L'Jarius Sneed and Calvin Ridley are playing. Like, it's a 53-man roster. Like,
sure,
2 guys aren't the reason that team is sunk.
Yeah, but when you like sign all those, you would never have the opportunity to sign all those big name guys if you had that base, right? Like, when the Colts, like, I think when everyone was really mad at Chris Ballard,
no, I think you still would, because like, a lot of their best players, really outside of Jeffrey Simmons and Harold Landry, those guys are still on rookie deals.
It's not, but they would be starters. You wouldn't sign a big name guy if you had a guy on a rookie contract who was good enough to be a starter. That's what I'm saying. So Tennessee,
to an extent, but I mean, like, even like, we can even use, like, Green Bay with Xavier McKinney as an example. Like,
yeah, but they got rid of Darnell Savage and they drafted 3 safeties after it. So,
yeah,
like,
and that's
and then, but they also they got rid of Aaron Jones and then they brought in Josh Jacobs. So, like, you would never have the opportunity to buy all those players that Tennessee did if you had the starters.
But that's 2 guys
through the draft: Calvin Ridley, Ernest Jones, L'Jarius Sneed. There's probably more.
Chidobe Awuzie, I guess, but that wasn't, like, a big deal. And, like, the whole, like,
I'm just saying,
everybody loved to throw Jamal Adams into that, like it wasn't a $1 million deal for.
Let's simplify this quick. When you look at the Colts situation that is more unique to every single, Chris Ballard has proved he will not be active in free agency. We all know that. He would rather pay his own guys. He said that from the second he stepped in, and 8 years later, here we are, and we know what to expect. You can also say during those 8 years, the teams that traditionally are going after the top guys and not the right guys have been wrong more often than not. When you look at that mega cap space that Chris Ballard has had for almost all the years and sat on his hands with it, people have been upset about it. But when you also look back, Chris Ballard's
they haven't. Like, the Colts they've spent 90+% of their cap space almost every year.
And they'll continue to do that. I'm just saying I'm saying sat on their hands in terms of signing outside guys. They would rather reward a guy like Buckner A guy like Quentin Nelson, a guy I'm trying to think of more, Kenny Moore, who Chris Ballard has signed back multiple times, Grover Stewart, who has signed back multiple times. Guys who are on third deal, Zaire Franklin, who's on his third contract. So like Chris Ballard will always rather do that than pay the wrong guy money. Like he will offer, but he has his price and he won't go over it. And more often than not, teams, I think we saw this with Snead. Now, Destin and I love to joke about it. So like, I don't know. I don't have sources to know where the Snead thing went wrong, but you have to imagine that Chris Ballard had a price point and said, hey, it got above the price point that I'm willing to play for this player because I'm not going to put our franchise in a position where we have a bad contract on that we don't think you're going to be able to outplay that sort of mega deal. So that's probably where things fell short.
But I think too, like in a weird way though, like Chris Ballard, and this is probably the reason why he should have been going after 2022, right? Is because he fell into that trap of he thought the roster was better than what it was, and they went out and they signed they signed the quarterbacks, signed Matt Ryan. Like he went all in that year. Like that's all in Chris Ballard, right? Like on getting all these. Like he went out, he was strong in free agency. They had a strong draft, and he went out and he paid a lot of money to a lot of outside guys, and he went all in, and it blew up in his face. And that's probably why
who are the guys in 2022 that he signed for big money?
Well, not big money,
bad contracts. Because I would say that you could argue everything you want about Wentz and Matt Ryan, but I can't think in his outside of the quarterback situation, which I consider its own separate thing. Chris Ballard has probably never put this team in a bad contract.
No, they've been very.
Someone can correct me, but I would say that at most one of a bad contract. He's been very good in that regard.
I'm trying to see here.
But all I'm trying to say is like when you look at the Colts situation and you look at what was right for them, notoriously when we set yourself a reminder in March that when the guys that will hit the open market are hitting the open market for a reason, their teams didn't want them and didn't see value to pay them. So yes, there are still going to be good players on the market that will be productive players. But when you think about, the Colts need to upgrade it. When we thought last year, the Colts need to upgrade at corner. They need to upgrade at pass rusher. They need to upgrade at wide receiver. So let's go pay all these different guys as opposed to maybe neglecting the draft. And then maybe some of the guys like Samuel Womack who are like, I'm not saying that the whole plan for Chris Ballard should have been, let's rely on the 15th waiver claim to be our starting corner. But like, there's also opportunities.
It's better to be lucky than to be.
Look at the most high impact free agents this year, and you can make the argument outside of Xavier McKinney and really Josh Jacobs, who are one of the more higher paid guys like Cordero Patterson, guys like Zach Bond, guys like are making just as much of an impact. So like, at a way lower price point. So like, that's what I'm saying is like, where I've always faulted Chris Ballard is not for getting involved in the first wave of free agency. It's the fact that he's kind of been neglecting that second wave where I think that there's.
I think that's what's frustrating too, because he's shown that when he does dip into it, he largely is extremely successful at it as well. Like a lot of those guys come in.
That's always been my thing. I actually don't want my team in.
No, and I agree. That's what I'm saying is like it would have been negligent for the Colts to do that this offseason because you don't know what you have in Anthony Richardson. You don't know what you have in some of like the young cornerbacks. And it was never about going out and getting this huge high price free agents. I think we both agree on that. It was more about addressing the depth of the roster, like with like veteran presence. That's where I think
like there's guys like Cam Curl, who I thought
my whole argument is
Cam Curl. He's going to be at a reasonable price point. Hey, let's get, and the majority when you look at it, like, hey, let's go get maybe a Jeremy Chin. Now that defense is great. I can't really speak. I haven't studied Jeremy Chin to know if he's playing well, but those were some guys in that second wave where I was like, hey, it might be worth dipping some of your money into that, as well as paying some of the guys. And that's where I fault him more than, hey, we need to dominate the headlines.
Yeah, it's like, but like, and that's the thing. It's like, it's arguing a failed process versus a failed process. Like at the end of the day, utilizing free agency as your sole team building exercise and handing out big money contracts, it is bad. It is not good. not utilizing free agency at all and completely ignoring it is bad. It's not good.
Well, did they though? Like they still spent. They just re-signed their own guys. Like I'm sure there was a reason that like Julian Blackmon didn't get signed until later in the process. There was a reason that guys like Kenny didn't get signed right away. Is because I don't think if they would have been signed prior to that window opening. So I do think that the Colts considered other options and probably had their names in hats that weren't reported necessarily, or those guys would have been signed earlier in the process,
as we've discussed.
So
they tried to go after some big fish. It just didn't work out for them.
Exactly. And I'm not saying they deserve credit for it, but I also wouldn't say that they didn't use free agency this year. It just really, on the outside, it really looks like that. But I think that there was some, a sprinkle here and there wouldn't have hurt.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like they could have done something, right? Like you could have brought in, like it's never good to just be on like one extreme to the other extreme. Like there's a middle ground that I think is a successful thing. And that's where like I think Houston is. Like I think Houston is kind of in the middle ground. Like they didn't, outside of the Danielle Hunter contract, and I mean I guess you could throw Joe Mixon in there, even though it wasn't like a massive thing. Like Stephon Diggs,
he's making significant money. I don't think it's nothing, right?
That's what I'm saying. Like I mean, if you want to throw him in there, I wouldn't argue it, but it's not like it's like you have a quarterback on a rookie deal, and like it's okay because you've drafted so well. Really, for most of your team, most of their team is draft picks. But like even guys like Azeez Al-Shaair, like he's making a massive impact on that roster. Like he's played great football for them. Joe Mixon, when outside of the injury early in the year, he's played great football. Danielle Hunter, great football. Stephon Diggs, regardless of what you think, like he's making a really big impact on this team. Is he unique?
How? Like I want to know how he's making the impact on the team, because when he was signed, he was he was supposed to really take all he did is
that's just based off of name value. Like they never signed Stephon Diggs to be.
Well, you just said he was one of the best receivers in the league last year. So, like, if he was,
well, no, I didn't say last year. Last year, like the second half of last year, it was horrendous in Buffalo. It was terrible.
So wouldn't you say that he said that? And now it was a 1 year deal. They restructured
so they took a shot on 1 year, and I think largely he has played to the level of what they made the move for. Like, if you look,
well, they also gave up draft capital for him, so you have to consider that. It was a 20. They gave up a second round pick for it. So like they gave a second round pick for a 1 year deal that yes, he's banking on having a really big second half of the year and getting paid more money, but they gave up a second round pick for a guy that isn't playing like he was worth a second round pick in a trade when like so that's he wasn't a true free agent. He was a trade. So that's kind of that's all. That's the same way L'Jarius Sneed isn't. So like, that's. I can't say. I guess
it's just like the big swings when I think of free agency. You think of like the big swings.
Yeah. So we can differentiate the two. I'm just saying like, it's we can't say it's inconsequential that they signed Stephon Diggs when they gave up a second round pick where you could make the argument A.D. Mitchell was right on the board for him. Keon Coleman might have been on the board for him at that point. I don't remember. They had wide receivers they easily could have drafted. They might have been in the range to trade up for Brian Thomas Jr. at that point. Like if they wanted, that was a route they could have gone. And imagine how scary they'd be in that sense.
Well, they didn't. They didn't. I don't know if they could have made that happen just because they gave up so much on the Will Anderson trade, which is where that's a whole nother thing.
Did the Vikings come back up for Dallas Turner? Like it doesn't matter who the play. So like I'm throwing a lot of hypotheticals out here. I'm just saying that like when you look at this, I can't say the Stephon Diggs acquisition through 7 weeks has been beneficial for the Houston Titans. I can't.
I just can't say that it's made no positive impact on that roster. I can't like.
I'm sure that they'll tell you
in the
biggest game that they've played without their star receiver, he was people would have told you, if he was signed to make an impact. He had 5 catches for 23 yards and pretty much got shut down by Jair. And Tank Dell hasn't been great either. That's different aside, so that you would need Stephon Diggs to step up, and he hasn't.
Yeah, but with Tank Dell not being there, as we've seen,
This is a good debate. I'm loving this.
Yeah, it's like throughout the league, what are they doing? They're going too high. They're taking away these explosive plays that Stephon Diggs brings. But meanwhile, who takes advantage of that? Joe Mixon, who is absolutely gashing people last week. Like it's all like
I'd love to see their rates and how much too high they're getting. In general, I agree with you. He's been great, but that's more of an indictment on Joe Mixon and Bobby Slowick in the run game and his commitment to run the ball than I think it is on Stephon Diggs is forcing defenses to open up the run. So like this is my opinion when you look at potential moves. So we can just to put a bow on this. There's Chris Ballard could probably go out of his way to utilize free agency in a capacity that is risk adverse, where like you're not going to set this franchise back by making a signing like Cam Curl for very young, all those kind of things. That could be really beneficial. We've seen teams that are consistently good at drafting doing that. You can't just rely on drafting and using all your money to re-sign young talent. I also don't necessarily think that's entirely the case, but when you look at it, that's really how it's been. You also can't say that free agency, that the Colts have missed out on a ton of free agent opportunities, where you look at guys that everyone has wanted them to sign and say what the results has turned out any better, at least in the past 2 years. I think
it says something too that the Colts went out and tried to sign those guys. So I mean, if we're going to give the Colts credit for those players, like I'm not going to sit here and give the Colts credit for those players picking other situations, like.
Yeah, well, in this situation they bowed out, but have to imagine there's others because again, like
sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, right?
Exactly.
I mean, totally. You just get lucky. But,
totally. I think the process of drafting is less risk adverse when we look at the Tennessee Titans, where it's like, what's their goal right now? They were supposed to come in and say, hey, if Will Levis is any good, we have a Super Bowl roster that we just went out and got significant pieces for to fix instead of trying to take some time and draft and then look at. I think you can.
It lies exactly, and that's my point. Is it lies somewhere in the middle, and like to be on one extreme or the other is generally not where you want to be. Now, I think like if Richardson came, like I think we all agree, like if Richardson came out this year and looked like a top 10 quarterback and balled out, and they had the extra cap space that they're kicking over to next year, the Colts would probably be really aggressive in drafting and making moves in free agency to try to bolster their roster to make a Super Bowl run.
I just look at like guys like Bryce Huff that are on this list. I think Christian Wilkins is injured, so I'll give him the pass there. Like Patrick Queen hasn't necessarily looked great. Gabe Davis was another guy that was really big. You can look at the top of this list and see so many guys that everyone was banging the table.
But then you have but
Lloyd Cushenberry was a sub top 10 AAV.
Yeah, but then like you see guys also like Greener there in Minnesota who has made a huge impact for them losing Neil Hunter. He stepped in, played great football. Xavier McKinney played great football. Like some of the running, like Josh Jacobs and Joe Mixon, those have made positive impacts. So I mean, like for every is it largely?
There's certainly variables, but then you look down the list and you just see way more hits for lower price points. So I'm saying if the Colts are ever going to dip the main, I think to put an absolute bow on this, if the Colts are ever going to dip in that first wave of free agency, it better be for the right guy because there's some very consequential contracts that might not be a word that you can get yourself into. So that's why I think when you look at it, they could have been more aggressive in that second to third wave. But right now, it's hard to say otherwise. There's like the 30-minute tangent on Chris Ballard, by the way.
Yeah. Yep.
Exactly 30 minutes almost.
Exactly. All right.
That's good.
So what we got now?
I was just eating my popcorn. It's like, yes, take it from Twitter and put it here.
Well, I think like what's funny is like we're largely on the same page, so it's not like we're.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, but I didn't want to interfere.
Yeah, no, we definitely are. Like I'm arguing. We're partly arguing the air, which is the people on Twitter that say otherwise. Like
stop letting them get to y'all.
That's partially what's happening. Like both of us can agree that the Colts should never be big outside spenders year after year because they'd be finding a new general manager. I think we both agree that hitting on draft picks is good and building that base.
But one or two guys isn't going to kill you.
But also, are there opportunities out there that they could have used to build the depth and build? Yes. So like, I think that's
that's kind of where we're lying on this. And we're agreeing that it's the same thing.
Yes. The whole
But I
time.
just want to set this reminder. So clip this for the week 1 of March when everyone's like sign T Higgins or like who's going to be a free agent. I'm pulling it up right now.
I hope T Higgins stays in Cincinnati.
Stephon Diggs is going to be a free agent. We need Hassan Reddick, the pass rusher. Matt Judon. Ryan, I don't know. Ryan Kelly's up in the air. Let's get Buda Baker. Like when everyone's like, let's
Ronnie
sign
Stanley.
these big name guys. Deontay Johnson, like these are Brandon Cooks. These are all guys that are top of the market next year. And just remind yourself if that's really going to help you come September, October. So
I just know in March I'm
Your boy
muting
Buda
half
Baker's on there.
of the Twitter section.
we need Justin Simmons again. He was great in Atlanta. We need him again. Hollywood Brown sat out the year. Bring Gilly back.
We're about to see him soon. We're about to expose him like we just did L'Jarius Sneed.
No, I think a lot.
Yeah.
He's getting so much flack over the last few weeks. Poor guy.
Has
It's been great.
Gilly gotten slack? Has he played bad?
No, I don't think he has.
No, he did get cooked this week though. He got planted on his ass.
Damn.
I think Khalif Raymond, if I'm not mistaken.
That's
Absolutely
tough.
put that guy
That's
in a-
so tough.
Bro, he put that guy in a blend. He put him in a blender. It was bad.
That's so tough.
He made him fall over himself. Yeah.
Was it bad like the Justin Jefferson zig route?
Oh yeah, like he tripped. Like it was bad. Look it up. I'm sure you can find it on the internet at this point. But look up Khalif Raymond, Stephon Gilmore. Yeah,
Definitely gonna look that up.
it was a bad rep.
Yeah, for
It
sure.
was not. It was a great rep from him.
Yeah. Oof.
Yo, let's get Cooper Kupp, guys. Let's get Cooper Kupp. We need.
Oh my
he's the
gosh.
missing piece. 80 sucks. He's the
Veteran minimum.
piece.
Yeah. Myles Garrett might be available. That's good.
Stop.
I will bang the apple. I will bang the apple right now.
Stop. It's never happening. And like, here's the thing though, like everyone's like trade for Myles Garrett. Do you know what the price for Myles Garrett's going to be? You don't want the price.
Three
Like,
first round picks.
That's like 70 first round picks.
you wanted it, like you don't want that. Like when you look at it, it's like, oh yeah, adding Myles Garrett would be great, but like you don't want the price point for some of these things
Yeah,
when you have the
Cleveland's
opportunity
going to be running to the bank till 2030 with our first rounders.
Exactly.
We'll be the Titans for real.
Njoku, like even Njoku is probably worth like a fourth, maybe he's a fourth. Njoku doesn't make sense to me. That's been the rumored one. Everyone wants production from the tight ends, and I'm like,
It's Will Mallory
"Man,
season
you're
anyway.
just not getting it in the pass game. Like
Just draft the Penn State kid next year.
Tyler, what that bro? I will continue paying my.
Just draft the Penn State kid.
Just close your eyes, Chris, and hit draft. Hit draft.
Just call that Pennsylvania number.
He's gonna be a dog.
I'm perfectly fine with this offense, by the way, like how it is.
Oh, me too.
Go defense. Just draft.
I like it's way too early to tell, but I think the Colts are at a crossroads where like some vets might not be on the team next year to figure out how do you really improve the roster right now?
Yeah,
you definitely need running back depth. I think you can make that argument.
Yeah,
probably
right.
Tight end is probably on there, but they seem to really.
And I've honestly had the thought too, is like because like there's a good chance. Like, look, if we're being honest, there's probably a good chance Joe Flacco's retiring, right? Like he's probably not on this roster next year.
If he is, he's going to do 1 year as a bridge quarterback. What?
Yeah, like do you spend a premium pick on a quarterback to come in and compete with Anthony Richardson if he shows no improvement by the end of this year? I'm not talking about a first round,
like you're saying, like the Brock Purdy's of the world, or like the.
Well, no, that's a seventh rounder. I'm not saying that.
We pair him up with the tight end guy.
That's what I'm saying is like, do you take a guy like maybe that falls to the second round in this class, like a Drew Aller or whatever, and like, do you try to like? I mean, like, how does?
It's so early it's so hard to project that. Yes, I do think
it's so early. It's so early. Yeah, this is such a stupid conversation, but
This is such.
I've been racking my brain the last couple of days about it actually. So I'm like, because if Anthony Richardson, what if we get to the end? Like, what if we're in week 17 and Anthony Richardson still looks like he did in this Miami game? Like, and then you have the baked in like thing of like the injury history and all that. And then Joe Flacco is gone. He's not on this roster. It's like, what do
I don't
you do?
think it would be this year. I think it would be the year after, to be honest with you. If I just had
Well,
to guess. This year, I've said this. Anthony Richardson.
Well, and look, if it doesn't work out, and if you get to the end of next year and he looks like this, it's game. Like you're drafting a new quarterback. You've got a new general manager. Everybody's dipped out.
That's the timeline we've thrown out. He would have to look better than 32. It would have to depend. It would have to depend.
Like, you've got to have some growth. You have to have some growth.
There's levels to it.
That's what I'm saying. Is if you get to the end of next year, and he's still looking like Green Bay, Miami, like he still looks like that, then yeah, I don't know if you move forward with him as your franchise quarterback.
I think you would.
Because at that point, it has been 3 years, and you have nothing.
The third year, I think you would give him the third year because he's so young, and he could shoot out of nowhere. But you would draft a guy potentially in that second round to have a backup plan. I could see that. I don't know. We're playing
year 4. That would be year 4. And technically, they have to make a decision on his 5th-year option at the end of next season.
So this is year 2. He would have year 3. Oh, that would be. Listen, if Justin, but here's the thing: if Justin Fields is kind of in a similar situation with the Steelers, I'm not saying they would trade him, but if the Bears were never had that Panthers pick, they would be in a weird situation.
But even Justin Fields,
the Bears are an interesting thing because Justin Fields could easily still be a Bear if the Carolina Panthers were good with Bryce Young. But that's a scenario. That's a scenario out there because they wouldn't have the opportunity to draft Caleb Williams and then basically force
ifs and buts for candy and nuts.
We're playing way too many hypotheticals. I don't know.
We're off on the deep end at this point.
Marvel Studios, what if?
Draft the Penn State kid. Let's get we need a running back, maybe Genty in the first round.
I'll jump off.
Don't hype me up like that.
I can't say I wouldn't be excited if I'm being honest.
I would love it.
I'm not saying that that's totally unrealistic. Like, when you look at it, like Jonathan Taylor, Jonathan Taylor, I think Warren's better than Loveland, but that's just
Warren's better than
bias. But like, I could definitely see running back being a huge priority for the Colts.
I think it should be. I think it needs to be one of their first 3 picks.
And then we'll see how free agency shakes out and who they try and retain because they have key free agents, particularly I can see them going offensive line again in the first round, depending on what happens with Will Fries how they feel about Gonzalez or Bortolini, how they get deals done with both of them, what those injuries. There's so many variables right now, which is why they don't have to make that decision right now.
It's true.
That is true.
All right, I just went on like a 45-minute tangent. Welcome back to the Blue Stable podcast.
Woo! Before we get them out of here, is there anything you wanted to say about the secondary of the game? I think we pretty much hit on it.
Samuel Womack is stringing together game after game after game, and so is Jalen Jones. That has to be exciting for the Colts fans that thought that this defense had no hope. They're going to be tested with some elite receivers coming up. I wouldn't say I'm more excited now than I am nervous, to be honest. I don't know I'm sure Landon's probably scared out of his mind just knowing him. But I'm more excited for the matchup, knowing that, they could get burned, but it's a possibility. But I wouldn't say that I think it's a lock either, because I think they've been playing really good football very quietly that nobody, maybe outside of the people in Indianapolis, are really seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly okay. I'm not really terrified of the secondary. Like, I'm like now Sam Womack goes down or Jalen Jones goes down. Yeah, I'm terrified, which goes back to the whole conversation of depth. I think they got extremely lucky with Womack. Like, they got
Kevin Joseph season.
Well, I can't say it like
David Long Jr. season.
What luck is a mix of opportunity meets preparation, right? So, like, they clearly had a plan for Samuel Womack. because they targeted him in the waiver wire. They had priority. A lot of teams are in on him. They made a point to bring him in. So it's not like they just took a blind shot in the dark. But I don't think
they're not like, oh, look at this guy. Like, I think they were always going to claim a corner. It was
they were fans of him,
and they've had their pro.
And they scout those guys too, right? Like
they have an idea of who's going to be released at that point. So
right. So it wasn't just all dumb luck, but I didn't think they thought he was going to be what he is right now.
No way.
Which I don't know if anybody did. I don't know. A few San Francisco people, whenever he did get cut, they were not happy that he did not make the initial roster. Like they were not thrilled. But yeah, it's it's welcome to the blue stable where the points where the points don't matter and everything's made up. This is where we're at. I'm not super concerned about the secondary. I'm super excited. God, I hope DeForest Buckner plays this week.
Yeah, that's. Can we talk about that real quick?
Amen.
10 seconds before we head out. Getting DeForest Buckner back, he is.
I don't think people realize.
I don't think people realize what they're in for because it opens everything up for this pass rush. Like if you think this Colts pass rush isn't good, just go watch the Texans game. Just go watch the Texans.
Go watch the Steelers game. Go watch the Steelers game.
He wasn't playing.
Oh, no, I meant about the impact that he has of where these quarterbacks have been able to step up into the pocket and escape the edge rush.
Well, I'm saying look at what it looked like with Latu had a great game that week 1 Houston game.
Mm-hmm.
So did when they were able to mix Taekwon. Taekwon could be back next year. Taekwon could be back next week. Mm-hmm. So it'd be really interesting to see how it all plays out. But I think massive is such an understatement when it comes to this pass rush because the pass rush has looked non-existent basically.
And even the run game, DeForest Buck, because at this point, not only does it open up stuff for Latu and the pass rush and Kwity Paye and all that, because we understand that impact, but even
he's a beast in the run game too. Yeah, he's going to be so.
Are you going to be able to double team Grover Stewart in the run game now?
Now your run game ID turns totally different.
So then you've got a one-on-one with DeForest Buckner. You're leaving Buckner one-on-one. Or if you double team DeForest Buckner, which most teams probably do, then you've got Grover Stewart in a one-on-one. And that's been an unsung hero over the last few weeks because we see the rushing numbers. Grover Stewart has blown up a number of
watered some balls down too.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal over the last few weeks. Grover Stewart's been great. So I think he's probably playing some of the best football he's played in his career. He just hasn't had his running mate beside him. Teams are just hyper focusing on Grover Stewart, and they're running at. Shout out to Adam Gotsis, by the way, in the Miami game. Shout out Adam Gotsis in the Miami.
He's also played solid football. There's a reason he's out there.
Really good game from Adam Gotsis in that Miami game.
Another one that nobody even cares about. Give Chris Ballard and his pro scouting staff credit.
David Bryan.
Give him credit. Give him credit for Adam Gotsis. No, Taven Bryan had his best game in the Colts uniform. I still stand by that. He's gotten a lot of criticism from a lot of Colts fans. I'm not saying that all of it wasn't warranted, but he certainly has answered the bell week after week. So he got better, I should say, each week. He put together some solid football. Go look at what PFF is grading him on some of these plays.
What is it? Good or bad?
I think he has 27. Let me look at. I can probably just give you the number right now.
I'm actually just curious about this. PFF charged Anthony Richardson with 8 pressures this week. So
I don't know how that's possible.
That's crazy. I don't know.
He didn't get sacked. That's all that matters.
He has. He has 27 positive PFF graded plays and 24 negatives, which if you were to ask a lot of people probably wouldn't be that way.
Oh, dude, I'll take the positives over the negatives.
He has 30. He's also been on the field for 126 negative EPA plays. So there you go.
Shout out to Taven.
I'm not saying he's great. I'm saying he's way better than people think he is.
He's serviceable. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Whenever you're down to like your fourth
He
string
plays it-
defensive tackle, that's
Listen,
serviceable
he's
is good.
played exactly what his contract is too. When you think about it, they signed him for pennies. They signed him back for pennies.
Yeah, serviceable is good. I will take serviceable.
Yes, I agree. But let's go ahead and wrap it up. Been here for a little while. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll be back with a preview for the Colts and Texans. Should be a good one. That should be Friday. Say what, London?
The Pacers play tonight.
Yes,
Like
the
3
Pacers
minutes.
should be playing right now, actually. I think it's
30
6
minutes.
Eastern. Oh, okay. But you guys have a great rest of your week. Come back Friday at 5 Eastern. We'll be previewing the game. Houston, Indianapolis. Should be a show. But you guys tune in for that. Follow us on all platforms. Wherever you want to think we are, that's where we're located. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. Shout out to Coach Film Room for tuning in with us. Shout out to Landon as well. I'm Culture Shock. And until next time, you guys have a good week.